All right, welcome back to Equal Time. We picked a fancier background this time because this is an away game. We're standing here in front of, we think it must be the world's only queer soccer bar. Come at us, correct us if there's another one. More the merrier. But yeah, we have to intro our guest right away because Dani's pulling in big timers. This is what happens when you get a pro on the show. So Dani, you need to introduce your former teammate who's joining us today.
Yes, I am so excited to introduce one of my best friends, Haley Kopmeyer. I played with her at the Seattle Reign for many years, but she has a very decorated history. Haley, you played in Australia, you played in Cyprus, you played in Seattle, then Orlando. Am I missing anything there?
No, you're nailed it.
Okay, excellent. And now you are doing stuff for Just Women's Sports. You are coaching, you are working with West Coast Goalkeeping, you're doing all sorts of things. Bring us up to speed on your life just quickly, if there's anything that I'm missing there. You have a dog named Ricky.
I do. Hold on. I'm gonna make Ricky come say hello because I feel like that's the most important thing. And like to even just
Ricky.
I'm gonna put a scarf on him.
Oh, hey, buddy.
So
yes, he's an Aurora FC fan already. I love it.
So he's a fan. He's not cooperating, but this is Ricky. This is the most important life update that I have.
Yes, excellent. Excellent.
Well, talk about you're a community owner. I didn't know that even when we booked you. Haley, that's amazing. So what did you experience seeing the impact of the game last week? And you weren't in the stadium, but obviously it went across the soccer, Twitter world and everything. Just talk about your feelings being a part of this.
Yeah, you know what? I remember like when this went live, around Minnesota soccer, and actually a mutual friend of all of ours, Vicky Hill, was like, Haley, the new team's coming to Minnesota, like you can become a part, like it's a community ownership thing. I was like, okay, I gotta do this. So I did it. I am, I think this might make me your boss. I don't know.
It does.
Like I might be your boss now. No, but I'm so glad I did it. And I got my scarf in the mail and I was stoked. And it just made me really excited for last week's kickoff and to see, I mean, anytime you see a packed house, just kind of in the women's game as it continues to grow, it's amazing.
Yeah. And you've played in Summer League's W League before, correct?
Yes, I did. I think I was WPSL and W League at different times.
And where did you play?
I played in Arizona.
Okay.
So I did, at the time it was the Arizona Rush. Played WPSL there. We had a good season. And then I did a W League season in Indiana. I was 18 when that happened. So
and for context, you went to school at the University of Michigan. You're from Michigan, so you really got the opportunity to travel during the W League and go play some other places.
I did. I loved it. It was such an incredible experience. I think especially like Arizona in particular, which was such an awesome time in my life. I lived with such a cool family. The soccer was great. It was great training. It was like really my first exposure, like in a professional environment. And not that Michigan wasn't, but in the sense that I didn't have school. So I was like, okay, this is really my full-time job. And I really think that ultimately helped prepare me for my pro career, just a year later.
Yeah, sure. And so seeing how the franchise here had such an amazing community turnout, I'm guessing your W Leagues didn't have 5,000 to 6,000 people.
Oh my God, no.
I know some NWSL games we didn't have that many people.
It was like the girls on the team's moms, dads, and significant others. Clearly, maybe for to see a crowd like that, absolutely not. And I have this one vivid memory too of one time we played a game and someone plucked a banjo, not even into a microphone, for the national anthem. It took an hour, and I was like, that is such a different experience to what we saw.
Yeah.
Talk about playing in a big game like that. So, for example, when Dani played in NWSL, you're playing a home game in Portland. There's so many fans, kind of how Aurora experienced last week. But then the next week you go to a game and nothing against the other teams, but there's just not going to be that same atmosphere, right? And you might be maybe it's a stadium with no real stands and there's only 100 people. How does it affect you as a player? How do you have to challenge yourself to stay up?
Yeah, you know what? You just really do feed on the energy. And I think it is, in some sense, those crowds that create rivalries, right? It creates this environment that you want to play in. Everybody wanted to play in Portland because it was always the craziest game of the year, especially then being Seattle and Portland, because they just inherently, hated Seattle. It just created this like unbelievable atmosphere, and the games were already always that much faster. They were that much better, because you just sort of feed on that crowd energy. And so then again, you're right. When you do travel and you go to these places where there aren't as many fans, like you're sort of like, okay, like you're sort of creating your own energy a little bit, right? In a way. And you just don't quite have that same sort of like hype around it.
How was it at Orlando? Did you guys have like a rivalry, like a Portland-Seattle thing, or is Orlando, did you guys have anything like that?
I think we definitely had like maybe like little rivalries with people, but I wouldn't say anything quite like the Seattle-Portland rivalry. I think we had really competitive games against like Chicago, but that's not exactly like there was nothing else at the time. It was just kind of based on the fact at the time that we had really good and close games.
Yeah.
We actually always managed to play pretty well against Portland, ironically enough. Like those were good games for us, especially kind of, my last year in Orlando when we struggled a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about the challenges. Aurora put their starting lineup out, and there were a couple women changed. And part of that is, I think, potentially them being busy with other commitments in the summer. And then also we do still have some players that might, I'm guessing, be like COVID protocol. It could be with the players traveling. So just talk about that challenge in summer league where you're trying to build chemistry and you have players in and out, but you're still trying to move forward and develop. How do you go into the next game facing that?
Yeah, I think that's such a huge, especially for the summer leagues generally, and as they're growing, that is such a huge challenge, right? Because I even know, I'm an assistant coach for a college team, Seattle U out here now. I'm working with them. They're still in school. So, if the team were to go on the road right now, they might not be able to do a Thursday on the road game if they have labs in class, other things kind of like that. So you're up against kind of these challenges of having a mix of, student athletes who, when's their reporting time, and that are all kind of on these crazy different schedules and have different summer obligations. And then you also do have people, though, that are done with school and are, kind of like just teetering sort of on that edge of being a pro or maybe have another job, right? You're really sort of going against so many factors. So it really is a testament to the great summer league teams, or the teams that kind of come out in the end, like how deep they are, how quickly they gel as a team, and are able to put it together despite kind of the circumstances thrown against them. And, just taking advantage of every game because it isn't a long season. It really is a short season and it's quick. And if you can figure it out fast, you've got a good chance at a postseason run.
Yeah, for sure. And you've seen now, having like covered women's sports at kind of every different level, you've seen the NWSL grow from season 1 to what it is now, women's soccer gaining more coverage. Obviously, you're covering it. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the excitement that we've seen going around women's soccer and how like this kind of seeing the audience come out around this team has made a big impact in like the changes of women's soccer that are happening right now?
Totally. I think that the game itself, right? Like it's this push to sort of like be recognized for like what your output is, right? And it's, and I think working with JWS and, having this mentality of like, women's sports are not a charity. Women's sports are not, you shouldn't do it because you feel bad. You should be doing it because you want it to be equal. It's like, no, this is sick. Look at these goals. Look at these saves. Like, these are insane. This is stuff you should want to go to. You should want to watch, and you should want to be a fan of every age. And it should be men. It should be women. It should be whatever you identify as. It should be everybody. And it's just because you think it's dope and you love the game. And I think that movement happening right now, right? They're not going out and just begging youth players to drag their players along. It's like Minnesota was like, we're gonna right? Like, we love soccer, we love good soccer, and we're gonna bring really good soccer here. And I think you kind of saw that with the team, and that's such now. I think especially in the leagues, that's sort of the standard now. And you see like new teams coming in, like the Angel City, and you see what's happening and like the names that are getting behind it. And now every other team is like, okay, no, like, yeah, we're not a charity. We're dope. Like, let's go. Like, we can have cool owners, it's and it's true.
That's awesome. Well, and so I want to talk about your experience a little bit. Hello, we're right in St. Paul, baby. We're in the city. I want to ask you, Haley, about your experience being a lot of the time you were someone challenging Hope Solo, which is about, pretty widely regarded as the best, keeper of all time. So I think, looking at these players, honestly, like one comparison with Minnesota Aurora, Sarah Fuller isn't Hope Solo yet, but she is like the solidified starter, and she has maybe someday. She has 3 other keepers, who are have to train and try and work, to learn from her, but also try and see if they can take her spot. So I'm just curious, you had probably the most challenging task of that, maybe of anyone.
Arguably twice, because
and then Ashlyn Harris.
Exactly. So
it's only number ones for the U.S.
And I think in any league of like women's professional soccer, especially in goalkeeping, it is such a finite, like truly, right? In the NWSL, there's 10 teams, 12 teams, whatever there is. There's only really 2 or 3 people on every team, and even in this league, there's not an immense amount of teams. Like you still have college keepers. It's so few positions for a position. So I think like first and foremost, like if you're there, you've done something right. And so I think really early on, especially in my career, I got really lucky because I was like 22 years old, fresh out of college, and I was with Hope. And so at the time, it's like, this is the best goalkeeper in the world. Who better to learn from? And I probably like day one, I couldn't even hold a can. Like I probably didn't even deserve to be like standing near because I for sure was slowing the drill down. You know what I mean? And then you slowly build, and then by the end of it, you're like, no, I am pushing Hope, and I am pushing Ashlyn. And then when my opportunities are coming, am I taking them? Am I, excelling in the minutes that I get? And I think again, goalkeeping is a little unique because you don't sub. Every other position on the field. Again, not that you get an unlimited number of substitutions or anything, but you've got a chance of coming in. Unless something bad happens, you're not subbing the goalkeeper. You're not getting yanked in the middle of the game. You're not using a sub on the goalkeeper. I think that's kind of another piece where it's just like you kind of have to be mentally a little bit different, honestly. Like it's a tough position to be in. So, I think having somebody like Sarah Fuller, who is now out of college, for some of these younger keepers that are learning from her or competing with her, it really is. It's sort of like soaking that all in and taking that of, okay, like truly identifying what she's really darn good at and trying to kind of emulate that. And then you're right, like towards the end of the season, like you should be wanting to say, okay, like if I get a shot, I'm going to take it. And if I don't get a shot every day in training, I'm going to make the coach question whether it could be me, And I think obviously you saw it in that first game. She was very good. She pulled out one absolute worldy of a save.
Yeah.
Huge save.
I was like, oh damn. Am I allowed to say that here? You guys are standing in front of me.
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah. I'm allowed to say damn. I know I was like, oh damn, like she flew. It was great.
Yeah, no, I think I said holy shit in the press box with that save. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, cool.
Well, you hit on something, Haley. You talked about a little bit of like mental preparedness. So when you first came into the league, the inaugural season, you were drafted 31, right? 31st?
32. Yeah.
Oh, 32. Okay.
No, I was 31 out of 32. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But then you were cut right afterwards. Is it due to the roster constraints, right?
Yep.
And then you came back on for Seattle. They signed you, and then a couple years later, you came in. You stepped in for Hope. You won NWSL Player of the Week a couple of times. So can you just talk about your mental preparedness through that and how that can translate to the girls that are going through something similar now?
Totally. I think when that happened and when that happened to me, I think originally I got on the roster in a way because Hope was hurt. So when Hope wasn't hurt, I no longer was, at the time they were only carrying 2 goalkeepers and you could only like keep 2 goalkeepers and pay 2 goalkeepers, which is insane. But anyways, that sort of was the byproduct. And I knew admittedly, like when that happened, I'm like, there's no team is carrying 3. I'm not playing. So like, I can kind of see the writing on the wall here. But I had been in the environment enough to know, I was like, okay, I know I want to be here. Even if it was like hard for me in some ways to admit, like maybe I'm not good enough right now to be here. And I think there was a lot of moments where I'm like, I think I should be playing. I think I should be getting minutes. And in reality, we were losing. Like we lost most of those games regardless. and then I finally got one. We still lost that game. You know what I mean? It wasn't about me at that point. Like as a team, like things needed to change, and they did. And I think that kind of seeing that, I was like, okay, I know I want this. So I think it was. Then it was sort of the challenge to me of like, okay, how do you react here? Do you leave? Do you step back? Like, is this your moment to step away, or do you? I decided to stay with the team kind of on my own and train when I could. And even though I didn't travel, I coached and played, and then, took it upon myself to get a coach in the off season, and, stayed in touch with teams and stayed in touch with Seattle and just tried to like prove that I wanted to be there. So I think there's it, you're going to, it's hills and valleys. I mean, it was hills and valleys till the very end, it kind of always is. It's like, man, like you're so high and then you're so low, and it is tough. So it just is. It's, you take your 10-minute pity party, and then you go, okay, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
Pause.
I gotta
Pause for siren.
Yeah.
Just admire.
Ricky might bark at the siren. So just heads up. But no, we're good. We're good.
It's all hills and valleys except for people like maybe Rapino back here. But yeah, she has a little more hills. But
I
she
will
has plenty
say
of valleys.
that first. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, that first year, I don't think the Reign. How many games did you guys win that first season?
I think we ended up winning a few, but only like we're like 0-9 to start the year, or like 9-1. It was, and even like injuries, like even Rapino's head, and you know what I mean, like stuff like that. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Even the best of the best, like it is hard. It's such an emotional game.
Yeah. Well, and talk about the scale of investment, because I mean, it's like speaking to how small the rosters were and how crunch teams would be if any national team players left, like when you played, versus what we're seeing, like the level of investment in Aurora. It must make you excited as an owner to see, like we have a goalkeeping coach hired just to be a keeping coach, and I'm sure a lot of summer league teams don't have that type of investment, and then they're using the world-class facilities, the Minnesota Vikings too. So, I mean, that might have been, do you think that could have made a difference for a player like you if during college you had that specific goalkeeping, instruction like that?
So I had a couple different goalkeeping coaches in college. So I was fortunate enough to have one, but, even throughout my playing career, it is a position where, we started and we didn't really have one. The team didn't have one, and they were trying to secure one. So this wasn't like, they weren't actively recruiting and trying, but, for the first 6 or 7 or 8 weeks, I think we tried out like 4 or 5 different goalkeeping coaches. It wasn't like a clear, we didn't really settle in quite right away. And I think that, to have that and be so prepared, and again, the beginning of the league, that is going to be hard, because they were like, okay, we're having a league, everybody go, and everybody's trying to figure it out all at once and figure out players and facilities and all those things that like so quickly. So I do think, and I get that it's hard, but you're right. Like, so now for the standard, and again, like now Minnesota's setting a standard for teams in their league and teams around them, that if you're going to come in, like, you got to have the right facilities. You got to have good fields. You got to have the right staff. You have to have qualified staff. You have to have staff that, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of puts all these standards on everybody. And if teams show up and they're not as equipped, it's going to show. And ultimately, it's not only going to show just, like visually, it's going to show on the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen too, just across the board, is like the NWSL, U.S. women's soccer. Everybody has kind of elevated what their expectations are for the support of the teams, the support of the athletes and the coaches, and just what is given to them, right? Like they've deserved it, obviously, but what we've been given. And I feel like now it's starting to trickle down into the W League, and colleges are, it's just the conversation keeps rolling.
Yeah, and I think it has to, right? Like the standard has been set, and again, the standard has been set because it's great, and that's what these women deserve, because they're, they're working incredibly hard, but the product is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of the day, that's the driver. And it is exciting, and it is something, you should want to be a part of, because that's where the game is going, And then I think, and I look at this, and I'm like, oh, you know what? At the time of deciding to put money in for the ownership of this, I'm like, this is dope. And like 6 years, wherever this goes, you know what I mean? Whether the team stays where it is, whether the league grows, whether it becomes an NWSL team or an affiliate or something like that, no matter where it goes, I'm going to be like, how legit is that I'm I was a part of this.
Yeah.
It's a tiny, tiny little part, but that I
Well,
was.
you play a huge part in growing the women's game, which is what we've been talking about a lot, kind of around the topic. And just women's sports is a really cool piece
You
of
guys
that.
have to be nice to your boss.
Well, talk to us about Just Women. How did you get connected to Just Women Sports, and just talk about what you do there, what you get to do in terms of creating content?
Totally. So Haley Rosen actually played on the Reign. Dani, were you there yet when Haley was there? You were not there yet. So
Nope.
Haley Rosen played a year on the Reign. Can't keep my ears straight. So we met then. Obviously, like we knew each other. Haley struggled with some injuries, so I think she made it through the season, but was a little bit in and out. And then ultimately, I think went to Scotland, came back, played with the Spirit for a bit, and then it was injuries that sort of derailed her career. And so, she retired or medically retired and kind of had this aha moment of, it is way too hard to be a women's sports fan. Like, it has such a barrier to entry. It's hard to like the websites aren't user friendly. You need streaming services to watch a lot of the games. Like, it's just this experience that it's hard to figure out who people are. It's hard to know the big storylines. And she kind of, had this aha moment, and it started as an Instagram account. And eventually it just like grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And, now there's, I think probably 30 plus people that have their hands, in and around it every given day, which is really cool. I think that's that's in about 2 years. It's totally scaled up. And it started early on as just this Instagram, and then it was an Instagram and a website, and then it was an Instagram website and a podcast. And now it's just sort of all this other content. And that's what I work on, is just like what we create, basically. I think that's just a fancy word, for like helping us figure out, what's going to go up, what's going to sell, stuff like that. But basically I just get to like come up with really wild ideas and like throw them at a wall and see if anything sticks. And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, everyone's like, Haley, that's wild. No. And I just like go back to the drawing board. So it's actually a totally for me. Yeah, you can probably attest to that. It's a real dream scenario for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with them though, like you've also, how fun is it to be like immersed in women's sports all the time?
Oh my gosh. I honestly, I forget that there are other sports. People are like, Haley, it's the NBA finals. I'm like, is it?
Is it?
I haven't watched a basketball game all year on the men's side. Like, I really mean that, because I'm like so in it. I'm so inundated in it. Like, I almost go the other way. Like, my mind is almost worked right now, that if you're like, did you fill out your March Madness bracket? My mind immediately goes to the women's bracket. Like, and that's really like almost like now how I'm wired, just because it is my day to day, and then like even like with women goalkeepers and really, really working to grow the game for them, kind of, and working with West Coast. That's been a big push of mine recently, is like, okay, how can, again, I know female goalkeepers, how can I help to get them more opportunities and, bring more to this side of the space? And so those are just like, I kind of have these like all these, like sort of passion projects a little bit that I get to play into, but I love it. Like I like that. And I'm like, anybody else probably quite thinks like that. People that I work with just go around.
Is there any sports that you're like, they're doing it right now? This is what we should all be emulating on the women's side.
They're doing it right now. I don't think anybody is perfect yet. I think you can see the longevity of the WNBA in a lot of regards, but obviously even there, like there's kind of this push right now for our commercial flights versus chartered flight. It's still, not totally perfect. And obviously I think I know sort of NWSL in some ways to like think that it's arrived. I don't think it has. I don't think anybody thinks it has. So they definitely got a long way to go. I look at like tennis and golf, like there's still sort of sexisms in the sport, like problems that need to get addressed. Like, there was a comment from the president of the French Open the other day about like not putting women in prime time. Like prize money is at least equal. It's like whoever wins tomorrow is going to make a lot of money, and you know what? Good, they deserve it. They should get paid. Like, pay them. So I think probably tennis and golf are the ones that are most ahead. Although my new favorite sport to follow is the W series, like the F1, so the W series.
Oh, sure.
I'm all in.
Everyone's going Euro with this F1, man. That Netflix is.
I think it was the show.
Yeah, it is.
I'm done. I went to Miami and like spent the whole weekend in the W series, and I'm like, wow. Yeah, I'm just like biggest fan girl now.
You're super in. We're gonna wrap up, but I have 3 quick hits for you, Haley.
Okay.
Because I want to know something. I want to know if Dani had to take a PK on you right now, would it go in or would you save it?
Oh no, my reaction times are slow. So I'm going Dani.
You're going to Dani? And then 2, seeing how good this team is doing, you're not that far out from playing. Does it make you want to try out? You come in for 23.
You know, I have been playing in a women's league on Tuesday nights. And I'm playing forward. And I'm scoring a lot of goals. I'm getting a lot of assists. And I am really loving that life right now for me.
I love that for you.
Haley, you can score those goals in the W League, baby.
I know I absolutely could not. But no disrespect to my league, but no, I absolutely could not.
And then the last one I have to ask, because if you have any Hope solo story you'd like to share, you obviously don't get to share the best ones. You know that? If there's any Hope solo story, maybe just a what made her great, how intense she was in training or something.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, the craziest save I've ever seen, and it was a Hope save, and it was actually in training, but it was like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But we were doing this like drill where you could like, basically you put people on the 6-yard line in front of the goalkeeper. And so when the person shoots, you can deflect the ball. So it's like this really quick reaction, and you got to make a decision. Like, do I dive? Do I not dive? Like, what do I do? And so I was like sort of standing on the 6, and like our coach shot it, and he shot it like into the upper. It was literally going into the upper 90. And Hope just dove, and she was like going top hand, like she probably was going to get there. And like I very obnoxiously stood up and like punched. Like you weren't allowed to stand up, but I stood up and like punched the ball in the other direction, like to just be a pain in the ass. And she literally stuck her foot out, and while she was like 6 feet off the ground, called me an MFer, and then flicked the ball over the bar with her toe. That's how much control she had with her body, and like her awareness of what was going on. And I was like, "You're a freak." That's great.
She's the best. She really is the best. And there's no argument about it.
She had enough time to like speak to me. I'm like, I'm diving around, I'm huffing and puffing and making crazy faces. She's like yelling at me and then like moving her toe.
the mid-air MFer is really good.
Yeah,
that's very helpful.
I would deserve that. Like that was an MFer move. Like I be an MFer.
Oh my gosh. Well, Haley, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got to see your old friend Dani.
So good to see you, Haley. Yeah. Just keep doing what you're doing. We all need more coverage on women's sports. Thank you for being on with us today. And thank you for being a community owner. Yeah,
awesome. Thanks for all the followers. Keep following, because we'll have some tweets and highlights going out. Hopefully the stream's good. And also, follow Just Women's Sports, because they do it all. And there you go. Always good content. You can check out Haley's show that she ran, a highlight show, the soccer show. I watched some of those. They were great from last season. So lots of good Haley content on YouTube. Brayden, you can take us out.